The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Hi, I'm Alicia Robbins, and I'm a cinematographer. I've been working in production for going on 23 years now. I'm very excited to be here on this podcast with Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Art, the podcast where we get up close and personal with women from around the world of visual arts. This is Season 2, Episode 31. My guest this week is the American cinematographer Alicia Robbins, who is the first female to become a full-time director of photography on a Shondaland series. Alicia was lead DP on season 17 of Grey's Anatomy and also lensed episodes of season 3 of the Netflix series Bridgerton. Other credits include a 2022 miniseries for Netflix titled Keep Breathing. She also shot 4 episodes of season 2 of the NBC reboot of Quantum Leap. The feature Baby Splitters, lensed by Alicia, won Best Feature Film at the 2020 Santa Barbara International Film Festival and Best Comedy Feature at the San Diego International Film Festival, and received a mention in Variety for its sparkling cinematography. And The Wedding Invitation won Best Romantic Comedy at the Manhattan Film Festival and Best Comedy at Burbank International Festival in 2016. Alicia is the 2018 recipient of the prestigious Emerging Cinematographer Award from the Cinematographers Guild for her work on the short Internet Gangsters. Alicia was born in San Diego, California in 1979, the youngest of 3 children. She has an older sister, Teresa, and brother, Tommy. To parents Mary Lynn and Tommy, both musicians, piano and voice teachers. Her parents lived in San Diego for over 20 years, but when Alicia was 4 years old, the family moved to Trussville, Alabama, where she grew up. At the age of 7, she became a competitive swimmer through high school. Despite a musical background, Alicia chose a career in cinematography, and in 2003, she graduated with an MFA from the American Film Institute. Alicia will be returning to Bridgerton to shoot season 4 later this year. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband, fellow DP, David Smith. Alicia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, you're in some excellent company. We've had some wonderful camera women, cinematographers. You know, we've had a lot of people from the industry on the show here, and a lot of them were pointing to you. You were nominated, you know, for this.
Wow. That's great. That's cool.
No, I know we've caught you at a good time because you're kind of on hiatus right now. You're enjoying some family time.
Oh, yes. Yes. A long hiatus.
Well, we'll call it hiatus because it sounds better, doesn't it?
Yes, it does sound better than saying I'm out of work for a while.
Well, anyone in the industry will understand that.
Oh, yes, they can relate.
Well, let's talk about your story. You're a California girl now, of course. You're right in the middle of business there in Hollywood. You were actually born in San Diego, not too far away, but you grew up in Trussville. It's a place I'd never heard of, called Trussville, Alabama. So why did your parents move? What was the story behind that, Alicia?
My parents were Southerners, so they were born in Alabama. So what took them to California was my dad enlisted in the Navy. And then after the 4 years that he did in the Navy, he ended up, the whole family wanted to stay because they loved San Diego so much. So they ended up living in San Diego for, I think it was about 21 years. And after 21 years, they decided that they missed home and family back home and picked up and moved back to Alabama. And I was 4 years old at the time. So that's why I ended up growing up in Alabama. My siblings are quite a bit older than I am. So my brother is 17 years older than I am, and my sister is 9 years older than I am. Of course, you wouldn't want me to say that out loud because people think we're twins. So they had already been living in California and felt very much like California kids. So my brother stayed in California when we moved to Alabama because he was already 21 years old. But my sister, being a teenager, had to come with us, kicking and screaming. But for me, as a 4-year-old, it didn't really bother me moving to Alabama and growing up in Alabama. And I did enjoy my life in Alabama. I had a great school that I went to, really great friends. I went to the same school from kindergarten all the way through senior year. But yeah, that's how we ended up back in the South.
Do you remember anything up until the time you moved? I think my earliest memories was something like age 4. So did you remember anything from being in San Diego at all?
I did, yeah. I remembered, there was this dirt mountain that was right next to us. And as a kid, I always thought it was so huge because you're a tiny little person. And I remember I would crawl over to that mountain and kind of just sit in the base of it. And I would play in the dirt a lot. Like I loved the dirt and I liked the ice plants. Apparently my mom would have to grab me before I would start grabbing the ice plants. It's like a succulent, and I would try to eat them. So I would try to eat the ice plants. So I kind of remember playing around in the dirt. A lot of times I'm wondering, am I actually remembering these memories, or is it because my dad was really big on taking video, 8mm film, our whole lives. And so I have all of this recollection as a child through these 8mm videos. So sometimes I'm wondering, am I remembering it, or am I just remembering the video of me doing that activity? So it's kind of hard to know. So I feel like I have a ton of memories from age 0 to 4 or 5 years old. But I'm not really sure if that's really in my head or if that was from the 8mm content.
Well, it could be that you have a photographic memory that would apply today.
Yes, I know I have a little bit of that. I don't know if it's truly a photographic memory, but visual. I do remember visuals more than anything else. I can almost remember if I'm watching something that I shot, for instance, I can picture the whole setup of how we were in the space for the most part. I might not remember every single light in there, but I do remember, oh yeah, that's right, we were here and there and and that was on the wall and blah blah. So there is some of that there. So yeah, maybe that's what's going on, is I do have somewhat of a photographic memory.
Sounds like some influence there. If your dad was a keen videographer, as we would call them today.
Yeah.
Did something rub up? Was he encouraging you to play around with cameras?
Not really. No. I mean, he was always using a film, well, because there's digital wasn't out yet anyway. So he was always taking photographs, and he was always taking 8mm video. And I know that my sister and brother, they were playing a lot with the 8mm and even doing some stop motion skateboard movies that they would put together. So they were playing with the camera. But for some reason with me, here's part of the problem. So 8mm was mostly in San Diego when he was shooting with that camera. Once we moved to Alabama, he still had the 8mm camera, but there was something about, well, things were transitioning over to VHS for the most part. So there weren't as many places to develop the 8mm. And I think he was finding that it was becoming expensive. So I remember in Alabama, that camera didn't really come out anymore. I noticed that. And once in a while, we would get to borrow my aunt's VHS camera, and we would shoot recitals or dance recitals, plays, whatever, with my aunt's video camera on VHS. And sometimes I would play with that. Like I'd film my friends or film my dog. You're always filming your pets, but it wasn't about like, ooh, that camera, that looks so cool. I want to learn how to use that. It was just more of wanting to create a little bit of storytelling in front of the camera and getting my friends to do silly little things. But I just didn't really associate that with, oh, I'm filmmaking. That wasn't in my head at all growing up, because I grew up in a musical family.
You did indeed.
Music was our background. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the soundtrack to your life, literally, wasn't it, as a child?
Oh, yeah. I could hear the voice. It's like a cacophony of voice students and piano students all at the same time while I'm doing my homework in the living room. and you're able to continue to work through that noise. I can still hear that because that's what I grew up with, because my dad would be teaching advanced piano students in one room, and my mom would be teaching either beginner piano students or voice students in the other room. And then they couldn't really hear each other, but all that music would be going through our air vents, and I would be hearing it all together in the living room and trying to do my math work. So, yeah, it was, I was very much used to being around music all the time. And then plus, since they were piano teachers and voice teachers, I also took piano. It was weird though, because I didn't want to take voice as much. I just wasn't into singing as much as I was playing piano. So I only took a few little voice lessons here and there from my mom. But piano, I did the whole run from very beginning all the way through senior year. And then into college as well. I ended up being a piano performance minor in college.
Oh, so do you still play?
I do. I still play. I don't play as nearly as much as I probably should. My background was being classically trained. And honestly, I got a little bored with playing classical music and reading music. And so it was over the last few years, I decided to dive more into chord structure and understanding jazz. And that reignited me wanting to play piano again, is learning how to read fake books and improvising around chord structure. So I am playing again, but I'm not really playing my classical music. I'm more focused on learning jazz. Yeah. So, but I do still play. And sometimes once in a while, I'll pull out one of my big Rachmaninoff pieces or something. And
oh, that's fabulous.
And try to plunk away with it. And it's not very good. So.
Well, with such a background in music there, is that something that you might have considered as a child, or not something you actually wanted to make a career out of?
Yeah, as a little kid, yes, I thought, ooh, I want to be a concert pianist, because that's just sort of what I knew. It's almost like when you're asking a kindergartner, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're all firefighters, doctor, whatever. What's the other mate? Oh, teacher. They always want to be a teacher. And I thought, well, I want to be a concert pianist. But it's not until you start growing up that you realize, oh, that is a really difficult thing to become. I'm definitely not putting enough practice into it if that's truly what I want to be. And you start realizing that when you're a teenager. And so I was really trying to think about, okay, what would I want to do in music then? And there wasn't really anything that appealed to me. I didn't want to be a music teacher. I didn't want to be a musician. That just wasn't, I still loved playing piano, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do professionally. But one thing that I did find fascinating, starting kind of in middle school, this is a fun fact. So I was like the poetry reading festival champion for about 8 years straight. And I know this sounds, you're like, what is that? So it literally is taking not poems that you've written, but taking famous poetry and reciting it. And you are judged on how you're interpreting that poem and how you're reading it.
Can you put music to it?
No music. No. So it is just an oral dictation of this poem. And I ended up winning county for, I think it was 7 years in a row.
Why isn't that in your IMDb?
I know. So I liked public speaking. I really enjoyed speaking in public. And so the poetry thing started leading. My mom realized, oh, she's really good at this. She can do public speaking. Why don't we look at some other things that might be interesting to her? So we started finding speech writing contests. So you would be writing a speech about some sort of subject, because I was a decent writer too. I could compose papers and stories pretty well. So I started entering speech writing contests that you then also get up on the stage and you do your speech. And I started winning some of those too. And those were great because a lot of them had prize money. So I ended up winning some money here and there doing these speech contests. So that started making me realize, oh, maybe I want to do something with public speaking. Maybe that's news anchoring. Maybe I want to be on camera as a news anchor where I'm having to communicate. So that's the road I started to go down after high school. I was looking for communications programs at colleges that had
the most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
An emphasis in like news and broadcasts and things like that.
Well, now you're making a living behind the camera.
I know.
But did you ever think, did you like the idea of being on camera? Did you ever think, well, that's where I should be?
Not as an actor, but as potentially a news anchor, yes. I thought that was appealing to me. I thought Barbara Walters was the bee's knees. I think so. And it wasn't until Vanderbilt that I realized, okay, if I really want to hone in on this and be like a Katie Couric or a Barbara Walters or someone like that, then I've got to hone in on communications as well as political science and potentially do a double major in both of those. And I started to take poli-sci classes and realized I absolutely hated them. I did not enjoy them at all. And then I started rethinking my choice. And luckily with Vanderbilt, you're not choosing your major first year. So it's not like you go in freshman year and you say, okay, I'm this major. They give you a whole year to figure out what your discipline is going to be. So after that first year, I thought, well, I've already taken all these classes with communications. I'm going to stay with that anyway, because I think there could be something still in broadcast that might be interesting to me. Maybe not news anchoring, but something. And then I still loved piano. So I focused on a piano performance minor with that communications study. And it really wasn't until I started volunteering at the Vanderbilt television station. They knew I had a a kind of a speaking background. So they would give me little segments to go out and shoot and be like a little anchor on the scene kind of thing. And I know I've talked about this story before because this is literally the transition from being in front of the camera to behind it. I had to go out and shoot a little segment for Vanderbilt Television, and my camera person didn't show up. And I'm like, well, I really got to go shoot this though, because this is what's happening. And And the station manager gave me a crash course on the camera, which was very similar to my aunt's VHS, by the way. But I realized at that moment that I had been shooting my aunt's VHS wrong. And now I know why that footage as a kid looked like crap. So the station manager gave me a crash course on it, exposure, focus, zoom, all the things that you need to know, where the record button is. And I went out and shot my own segment. And I loved it because I'm creating a story visually, having to put that together so that they can cut something together for this little news program. And I told the station manager, I said, okay, I'm way more interested in shooting with the camera than being in front of it. And so he actually was kind of guiding me like, okay, well then here, let's show you how to edit on our edit bay as well. And it was like a reel to reel. So VHS to VHS kind of system. So you have to know exactly how you want to edit something. And so I started to just create more content through Vanderbilt Television. And that isn't like in the communications department or music department at all. It is a side thing that's just a hobby. And that's where I really started to at least practice a little bit of what you would maybe call filmmaking. And I say that in quotes because I wasn't really making stories yet.
Well, our friend Gretchen Watson described you as very tech-minded. You can actually explain incredibly complicated pieces of gear as though you were describing a potato peeler.
That's great. Oh, my gosh. Okay, cool.
So I can imagine that, one camera to another really didn't matter. You would figure it out, take it apart, figure it out.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely. And then, of course, like after helping out with the TV station, I was figuring out things that maybe they didn't quite figure out how to do. It's weird because I'm technical to a point. There's some things that I still need help with or I have to ask about. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think Gretchen's probably thinking about when I was teaching 3D. 3D rig tech and 3D engineering at Reality. I was teaching some classes over there, and I think she was in one. So yeah, that is a complicated subject. At that point, though, I had worked with it so much that it was like the back of my hand at that point.
Well, it sounds as if she's been on the other end of your tuition because she said she absolutely loved your simple approach to complicated situations and openness to admit it's easier than some people make it out.
Interesting. Wow.
So we know where your talents lie, clearly, well, obviously, with all the productions that you've done. But I'm wondering if your parents might have been thinking or trying to steer you into some form of music or musical theatre or something like that, or did they leave your mind alone?
They left me alone. I don't know if they really wanted me to be a musician because it was a struggle for them. Their whole lives, it was a struggle financially and I remember at one point they had 50 students. They had a lot of students, but even still, it was not as lucrative as most professions. So I don't think that they really, if I'd said I want to be a concert pianist, they would have supported me 100%. But I think they were always hoping that I was going to find something maybe a little different that we considered to be a little more stable. And of course, I go into filmmaking, which in their minds as a musician is more stable. And yes, in many regards it is, at least with camera, because there's so many aspects of camera that you can do. You can be an assistant. You can work in lighting. You can work in gaffing, grip, There's so many parts of cinematography that you could have a job, and you could take many jobs freelancing all over the place. So in some regards, yes, it is a little bit more stable than just being an outright musician or music teacher. But yeah, they kind of left it up to me, and they knew that by me picking Vanderbilt and going to Vanderbilt, and that it was a school that wasn't like, okay, you have to know exactly what you want to do when you get here. They knew that I would find my way when I was there, and they would have been happy with any and all of whatever I decided. When I decided that cinematography was the path for me, they were actually really excited about that. They thought it was a perfect choice for, I guess, what they noticed my abilities including technical stuff. And I was like a kind of a technical kid. Like, there was once in a while I would come up with these ideas about some weird invention, and I'd be like, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if we could create trains that were propelled by magnets? And my parents are like, what? And then I would take my magnets and show them, and I would draw out a weird little design of like how this might work. And then I guess at one point that was something that was created. And I'm like, oh, I thought of that when I was like 8. So,
you should have painted it right there and then.
but again, the engineering aspect of it is not something I would be interested in at all. My husband is more of an engineer, and I see what he has to do to put camera systems together, and how he has to CAD and program CNC machines and know how to 3D print and all this stuff. And I'm going, oh, no, I am not interested in that at all. I just like the creative aspect, know a little bit of the technical, but no, when it really comes down to engineering, that is not my brain.
But I can imagine, though, in the nature of the job, you had to get a Band-Aid out from time to time and pick something.
Oh, yeah, of course. And especially with the all the time. Yes, because I have a lot of my own gear too. And so a lot of my indie projects for many years was always being shot with my own gear because it was just more cost effective. And so, yes, a lot of times you're having to fix the things that you broke. And then even like with the 3D training that I did, the 3D engineer and rig tech stuff, a lot of that was figuring out how to pull something apart and maybe reroute some cabling so that it triggers something and it works and blah, blah, blah. And I had to do a lot of that. So yeah, you do have to have at least a solid understanding of the mechanics of how a system is working and how the signals are flowing so that you can potentially fix it if it's not working. So yes, no, I have had to put Band-Aids on plenty of pieces of gear.
Well, or the gaffer tape, of course.
Yeah, or gaff tape, yeah.
If we were to meet the young Alicia Robbins as a child, what would she be curious about apart from the camera and so on? What else were you curious about in school and at home, out of school?
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for 2 is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Yeah, I mean, I still loved performance-based anything, playing piano. I was in musicals and plays as a kid. I was a swimmer as well. I was on swim team from age 7 through senior year of high school. Anything that was outdoor based, being out on my bicycle with my friends. And this is Alabama too. So you're not you're not wearing helmets and and my dog is running around with me everywhere I go. So, and no cell phone. So it's just like your parents give you a few bucks to go buy something and you end up at the ice cream shop on your bike. And then you just know that you got to be home before dark. Like that's kind of the rules. And it was lovely. At least the summers were just so much fun. And there was a lot of freedom. We had long summers too as a kid. I think we had just about a full 3 months off. And I know that doesn't really exist anymore with kids now. I think they get like maybe 2 months, if that. But we would get a full 3 month long summer. And I can still smell the chlorine from the local swimming pool that I was at pretty much every single day in the summertime, eating Fun Dip and and my dog would just be Muffin would be sitting right outside the gate the whole time. I'd be at the pool all day long and she would just sit there and wait for me all day long until it was time to go home, and she would escort me back home. And I think that's why my parents didn't worry about me so much, because they were like, as long as she has Muffin with her, then she's good.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that story. Every child needs a muffin.
I know. She was so sweet. She was such a good dog. Very, very smart. She knew how to watch traffic. So she knew how to cross roads, and super smart dog. And she was my little babysitter.
So would your friends have called you adventurous, bit of a tomboy, or mischievous?
No, I was definitely, even though I loved outdoors and playing in the wilderness, riding bikes, I wasn't really a tomboy though. My bicycle, I think I painted like pink and blue, and it had streamers, and I liked my cute little dresses, and actually,
Dolls?
Yeah, we couldn't really afford to buy me Barbies because those were always really expensive. So we would buy like Barbie knockoffs. I don't even know what they were. Or I would get like a hand-me-down Barbie from a friend or something like that. But like real Barbies were really expensive. So I think I got one or something. But I liked more animal-based toys. So I liked My Little Pony. So I was a little bit of a girly girl, but still loved to play outside and make believe and create stories in my head. And I would always try to get my friends to play these stories with me. Like, oh my gosh, now I am thinking about all these funny little memories. There was this one game that we'd always play called Dimensions. We called it Dimensions. And it was literally like you'd be in the grassy field in our backyard. And we would talk about how, like, well, if you step over this line, you're approaching a whole other dimension. And then we'd describe what that dimension looked like. So very sci-fi.
Yeah.
I don't know where we got that from. I must have just seen Close Encounters or something. And I don't know. I don't know where we got that from, but we played Dimensions. And that was one of my favorite storytelling games.
With actual real ponies to play with?
Not really. I did take some horseback riding lessons when I was about 9, for a brief period. It wasn't as fascinating to me as I thought it was going to be, but my parents let me try it. I was like, I want to try horseback riding. And so they're like, sure. They found a place where I could take lessons, and I did a few of them, but it was a little scary for me working with these big animals. And I was too intimidated, I think, to really stick with it. Plus, because they were pretty much like, okay, if I showed interest in anything at all, they'd let me try it and they would see if it would stick. And if I didn't show interest in it anymore, they would ask me, so do you still want to do this? And I would say no. So there was a few things I started. I started gymnastics when I was a little girl. And I did, I think, 3 classes, and I did not like it because it hurt. It just hurt. I felt like I was going to be bruised all the time. And I was kind of tall, so it probably wasn't going to work anyway. But when they put me in dance class, so like tap and jazz ballet, that I gravitated towards. And so I did that from 5 years old all the way up again through actually some in college too. So I did enjoy dance. So no, I wasn't really a tomboy. I was an outdoorsy girly girl, which is still kind of how I am now.
Well, it sounds as if you had confidence as a child as well. I'm wondering if that came from the family's performance background, that you developed
Yes.
the self-confidence with your public speaking, and that must have helped you as you were getting into the industry.
Oh, yes, absolutely. My parents were really good at instilling self-confidence in all of us growing up. And yes, and doing the performance aspect of having to be in front of people, that's a very vulnerable state. I remember having to do piano recitals. That was one of the hardest things for me. I was a really good pianist, but for some reason playing in front of an audience was always so difficult, but it was really good practice. And yeah, getting into the film industry, you do have to have that confidence behind the artistry to make your case for why you want to shoot something a certain way. So I do think that those skills were developed early on. And I was able to bring that into my practice now.
And do you see the difference between how you did get across your message then to persuade people that's how you wanted to do things, as opposed to now when you've got such a track record? I mean, people are going to accept it more readily. Do you see a difference in your delivery?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about early in my career. Yeah, because you're not going to always be able to sway someone towards a visual style because you are wanting it that certain way. Like, how do I explain it? Like, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I did then to finally sway someone. A lot of times I would just have to back it up with showing examples from other films that had done this, or find an article about a DP that had done it this certain way. So I would have to use research that I found to back up my ideas. Whereas like now I can talk about, well, this is how I had done something and it worked really well. And they're not going, oh, well, what independent project was that on? It's now I did that on something big and substantial. And so I don't really need to have all of that material to back up the claim for why I want to do something a certain way. I think that would be the biggest difference is, yeah, I'm not having to show as many examples. I think there's a little bit more trust, at least from directors and producers, that what I'm offering up to them visually is something that's probably going to look pretty good.
Yeah, it's solid and it's proven. You've been there and you've got the badges.
Yes.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
And I'm back with the cinematographer Alicia Robbins. And Alicia starts by telling us what she used to watch when she was younger.
Oh my gosh. I watched so many different kinds of things because, well, my mom loved like thrillers. So we ended up watching a lot of Alfred Hitchcock Presents and old horror movies like The Blob, Twilight Zone, all that. So she loved thrillers. And that was kind of like a weekend thing that we'd do, like Friday night or Saturday night. We'd watch these scary things and have pizza. And then but then I was also loving, because she loved them and so did my dad, musicals. So like Singing in the Rain was like one of my favorite movies ever. South Pacific. And I know that's kind of a dorky little musical, but
How about Oklahoma?
I liked Oklahoma. Carousel, I thought it was dark and sad, but I loved Carousel. I kind of saw all of those musicals growing up because my parents watched them. But I didn't really start loving filmmaking, or at least noticing the story aspects of filmmaking, until I was really paying attention to early Spielberg.
Right. And noticing how it was shot and started paying attention to things, and then sitting there for
Yes.
all of the credits, right?
You'd hope so. Maybe not as a kid. But like Jaws, Close Encounters, E.T., a lot of that early Spielberg work I was really fascinated with and loved it. And I still love it to this day. I mean, Close Encounters is definitely one of my favorite films of all time. But yeah, I've talked about it a little bit too, of the first time that I really kind of noticed cinematography. Again, I didn't know until later that it was the cinematography that was affecting me, but it was A Secret Garden, and it was the one that Roger Deakins shot, and it was just so beautiful. And I always noticed that about it, how beautiful it was, just the scenery and the light of the space. And I did notice that as a kid, and I would watch that movie over and over and over again. I think I ended up breaking my VHS tape of it because I watched it so much. So
it didn't get stuck in there, did it?
It might have gotten stuck in there, and I pulled it out and it's all shredded. That's what happens.
That's what did happen. Thank goodness we've moved on from there.
Yes, thank goodness.
So were there any women in the industry you were paying attention to?
Well, because I didn't really get into film until later at Vanderbilt, and then coming out to AFI. So growing up, no, I didn't have female filmmakers that I even knew of. So it wasn't really until AFI that I even saw that there were like women cinematographers out there. I mean, it's still really low. It's like 6% of working DPs are women. And I remember when Catherine Bigelow was like the first director to win an Oscar, female Oscar winner for directing. And so that's very new for, at least in the film industry, for women to even be at a level where you could be like, oh my gosh, that person, I want to be like that person. They are inspiring to me. There were definitely ones that visited AFI that you go, oh wow, okay, this person has been doing it for a long time, and they're still at it, and they are working and being successful. And I know we had Lisa Wiegand come in and gave a lecture, Amy Vincent, Nancy Schreiber. So you realize that, oh, this can definitely be a path for a female cinematographer. Obviously, it just, you knew it was going to be a tough road ahead. And I do believe that it is easier now than when I was at AFI. I was there 2001 to 2003. And you could tell that it was still very much a boys' club when it came to cinematography. But that's been changing over the years, thankfully. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of women storytellers, filmmaking storytellers that I was going, oh my gosh, that their work, that's what I want to see. My inspirations were like Spielberg.
You were aiming high.
I know. Like, well, for just his films, I loved them so much. But one of the big influences for me too was that turned me on to cinematography was Wally Pfister, who he's won an Oscar in cinematography, but when I first got to meet him and work with him, it was before he was famous, and he was actually shooting a movie in Alabama. So I ended up being a PA on this film. And this was a time that I knew that, okay, I want to do something in filmmaking. I just didn't know what. And being a PA on that film and getting to watch him made me realize, okay, maybe it's cinematography, because that looks really fascinating to me. I like the aspects of what he's having to create on set. He's dealing with the lighting, the camera, and so it started to register that, oh, cinematography, maybe it's not directing, because I thought, oh, maybe I want to be a director. But it was cinematography that I was interested in. So he was a really big influence for me deciding that that was the path that I wanted to do.
So just join up those dots for us from when you graduated from AFI and into your first jobs. Was that PA job presumably one of the early ones? But what was the step that you took when you actually graduated? Where were you heading?
Well, it was actually, so that's what's so nice about it is the job, that PA job was while I was still at Vanderbilt. So it was a summer in between my sophomore and junior year that this movie came through Alabama, and I was able to PA on it for the summer. And so after that summer, I knew that cinematography was something I was interested in. And so Wally was the one that advised me to try to start building a portfolio of work. And so while I was at Vanderbilt, my junior and senior year, that's what I did. I worked on building up a portfolio that I could submit to AFI, because he had gone to AFI and he said that was a great path. And so I figured I'd do the same thing. And that, yeah, that's what I did. I ended up building a decent enough portfolio to apply, and I got in. So I went right out of my senior year into AFI. So yeah, that was actually before going to my master's program.
And so then what next?
Oh yeah, after AFI, oh my gosh, scrounging.
What kind of jobs were you doing just to make ends meet?
Gosh, everything. I was doing electric work. I ended up working on a few Hallmark movies, being an electrician. That was kind of one of the best gigs. They paid a whopping like $250 a day or something. So electric work, and then I would try to do camera operating where I could. So even if it was for unscripted doc style reality, or just going to have to shoot an interview. But it was always just scrounging and scraping by to figure out how to make ends meet after you graduate AFI. Cause you're living in Hollywood or wherever your apartment is. You're having to pay this astronomical rent. Student loans are kicking in 6 months that you have to pay back. It's crazy how much money you have to make like right out of school. And I wasn't making, I went into a lot of debt, a lot of credit card debt, a lot of deferment on my loans. But it's either that or you go get a full-time job somewhere, maybe at a rental house or who knows where, but you get that full-time job, and are you going to be able to freelance then? Are you going to be able to take that little passion project movie that's going to help build your resume? So I didn't do a full-time job anywhere, even though that might have been helpful financially. I just continued doing the freelancing, taking anything and everything I could, looking for a feature. I did get a feature kind of right out of the gate, super low budget. It was like $50,000, but we shot on 16 millimeter film, and it was a little horror movie. And I thought, okay, well, that's great. I can at least get that on my resume. I've done a feature, and I did that like as soon as I graduated. I think it was in that first year.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line, that's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
That was pretty grown up then, shooting 16 millimeter right up.
Yeah. The director was really wanting to do 16 millimeter, and I was all about it because at least at AFI, I had been practicing shooting film. We had 16 millimeter projects and 35 millimeter projects that we had to do, so I had at least been practicing it, and so I felt fairly confident at knowing how to shoot 16 and expose properly for it. So yeah, that was really fun. I got to be really creative with it, and I got to do some really funky shots with it. And so that was helping to build my resume and my reel. So I was always looking for, okay, what can I shoot next that I can add to my reel? Because I knew that it was really about that reel and being able to show people your work and that you could think bigger than maybe what the project really was. So part of my goal was thinking about, okay, what do I eventually want to shoot and what kind of style am I looking for in my future reel? And so what I would try to do is, even if I took a tiny, tiny, tiny little project, a short, whatever, I would make sure that I could at least get 2 to 3 shots that were for me, that were these really amazing shots that I knew I could add to my reel. That would make it, that would look different from anything that I had shot before, just to continue to build that variety of work that people could see. So I did that for years and years. And so every year I was pretty much recutting a new reel, because I was always working to build on that and to add something better, take away something that was old, add something new. So every year I was probably changing my reel. And I did that for many years.
I think our listeners might get the impression of a very strong-willed and single-minded, ambitious young woman. Would that be fair?
Yes. Yeah. I knew that in order to succeed at this job, I really couldn't have an alternative for a career. I needed to hone in on what it was that I wanted to do. And there might be some indirect paths there, like when I did the 3D work for a little while, but that still had the goal of getting myself on bigger productions so that A, yes, I could make some more money, but B, which is probably the more important part of it, watching bigger, more famous DPs light giant sets. So I was able to continue my learning by working in other departments, but with still that tunnel vision goal of eventually I'm going to be a DP on hopefully bigger projects. Like you still never know if you're going to get a break in your career, no matter what. It doesn't matter how many years you're putting into it. You may not get a break, which is unfortunate. It really is about alignment of stars, luck. And when that luck happens, you do have to be ready for it. So there is that part. But yeah, I never really had an alternative to cinematography. That was always the goal. That was always what I saw at the end of the tunnel.
Sounds like you have a motto of staying ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yes. Exactly. And knowing what you can take too. So I think about if I had gotten the opportunity in 2018, which was the year that I kind of had my break into bigger television, I wouldn't have been ready for that 8 years prior. I think I would have been ready for it maybe 3-4 years prior, but like 8 years prior to that, I probably wouldn't have been ready for it. And I wouldn't have succeeded at it, which then is what launched my career after that. So it's really knowing where your abilities are and whether or not you can fulfill the tasks that are given to you. And it's that whole 10,000 hours thing. Like, you really do have to put 10,000 hours into your craft to feel like you're an actual expert. And when you really think about it, 10,000 hours is about 5 years straight of work. So you're not going to be ready for a big break 5 to 8 years into your career. You're just not. You haven't done enough hours in the practice to be able to think ahead 3 steps. Like, that's the thing, is like, once you start doing this over and over and over again, you're able to think like 4 shots ahead, which helps keep you on task, which helps with the AD department. Like, half of our job isn't just creating these images. It's about management. It's time management and knowing how to get all the shots that you need to put the story together. That is very much what our job is. And that just takes years and many, many hours of practice to get to that point. So yeah, I mean, you have to, and luckily when I did finally get that break, I had absolutely put 10,000 hours in, probably more like 15. So I was ready at that point. But yeah, I felt like I had the skills I needed to succeed at that job.
To become an expert in anticipation.
Yes.
You know, when you start a career, often we have to make sacrifices, and, you know, the career path doesn't go in a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what sort of sacrifices you had to make, because you didn't compromise by the sounds of things. You just went, you know, this is the path I want to take, and I am going straight there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to go and waitress or, you know, become a secretary or whatever.
I mean, I'm sure that relationships suffered. My husband and I, we finally, luckily he was a good friend of mine. I've known him for over 20 years, but we didn't start to date until 10 years into our friendship. I know that and I didn't get married until I was 35 years old. So I'm sure that that's part of what suffered, is not being able to be a little more relationship / family oriented, goal oriented towards like, oh, I want to have a family. I want to have kids, like that. Because of this tunnel vision of my career, 15 years goes by and all of a sudden you're 35 and you're going, oh, okay, now what? And you're still not ready for family and all of that. So I'm sure that part of my life was sacrificed. At the same time, and I'm always hesitant about talking about this a little bit. I don't regret that, though. Like, looking back now, I'm realizing that the way that my husband and I are and our lifestyle that we have now, I think we are better off the fact that we never did have kids. At the time, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm missing this part of a very important aspect of life. And I'm now 44. And now I'm realizing I didn't miss that aspect of my life. I just took a different path, and that was the correct path for me.
Any wish I had moments?
Well, not really, because I also try not to live by that as well. Because you can always still try to have those moments in the future, I feel. I've always been a big advocate of travel. And even when I was financially unstable, I would still make a lot of effort to try to get out and travel. Yes, it put me in a credit card debt. I talked about my credit card debt. Some of that was because I wanted to travel, but I did it anyway. And I'm not recommending that anyone necessarily takes that path, because when you do finally have to pay all that off, it can be really hard. It can be really hard, and it can take many years to pay all that down. And honestly, I'm probably suffering from that even now a little bit. If I'd been maybe just a little bit better about saving, right out of AFI and for those first 10, 15 years of my career, then maybe I'd be in a house that I really want to be in and things like that. So, but at the same time, then I wouldn't have had those experiences of travel. Like I ended up going to Italy. I ended up, my husband and I, when we first got together, we went to Thailand for a month. Like that was not a cheap trip, but we're like, this is important. It's important that while we're young and able and can explore and have these adventures, let's do it while we can do it. And so I'm happy that I did that, even if it did.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Put me maybe in a little bit more of a financial predicament.
But now you're past that, right?
I'm past it. Yes, I've totally caught up and been able to pay off student loans and everything with at least because of the jobs that I've had over the past 5 years now. So I'm very grateful for that. Absolutely. It is risky though, because you don't know if you're going to get a break into bigger movies, bigger television. You don't know if you're going to get that. So if you go into debt because you're wanting to travel and have these experiences, then you just have to know that you are taking a risk with no guarantee that you're going to be able to like really get ahead in the future. But I was also one of those where I don't need to have a big house. Like I'm very happy being in 1,000 square feet. That is fine, especially with not having kids and stuff. I can live in 1,000 square feet very comfortably with me and my husband.
Don't get the cat.
And and 2 cats. Exactly. So I'm never like, oh, I've got to have this 3,000 square foot home mansion. That's my goal. Like that's never been a goal of mine anyway. So I kind of knew even when I was taking these travel adventures that, okay, yeah, maybe I'm never buying a $2 million home in Los Angeles. Okay. Am I okay with that? And yes, I was absolutely fine with it.
Well, we know that life is unscripted. And that's the fun part of it, right? It is totally scripted. But what would you say were those turning points, those breakthrough moments you talked about, which we all hope to get? And you clearly have made a few of them, because in so many industries, one thing tends to lead to another. But can you identify the ones where you thought, gosh, I've arrived?
Yes.
And having done this project, then it puts me in a very good position to get something even higher up in the ladder and continue to climb the ladder.
Yes.
Can you remember those moments, Alicia?
Oh, absolutely. Because it was one particular job. So it was, I got hired as the C camera operator / additional cinematographer for a show called For the People, which was a Shondaland show in 2018. So, and from that job, because I did a whole season on that show, and I would get bumped up to DP pretty often. I would bump up on double up days. And then because they didn't have alternate DPs on that. So if the DP had to go to production meetings or scouts, things like that, and then I would step up for that day in DP. So I ended up DPing quite a few days on that show. And from there, because that was a Shondaland show.
What was the show?
It was called For the People. It only did 2 seasons. It was a law drama. And I was kind of bummed that it didn't get picked up for a 3rd season, because I thought it was actually a pretty cool show. But from there, Grey's Anatomy was looking for a new DP to come in and alternate. And they called over to For the People because all those producers talk to each other. And they had heard about me doing the C camera / additional cinematography. And they asked if I wanted to come over and shoot a couple of standalone episodes. So it's like while main unit was shooting, they had these little side episodes that were being shot and they needed a DP to come and do those. And so I ended up doing 2 episodes for them in season 15. And they liked the work that I did and then hired me the next year full time as the alternating DP for Grey's Anatomy. So that was literally the break. Going from For the People to 2 years of Grey's Anatomy. And at that point now it's like, okay, I've shot 20 episodes of network TV. My next opportunity was with Netflix, which was a mini series. And then Shondaland called back up again and I went to Bridgerton. So yeah, that was specifically the job. That was the big break.
I would imagine once you get into Shondaland that the door is open then, and it may open again.
It's open if you do a good job.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Clearly you did.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is. Yeah. They do like to hire within their network of people that they know and trust. So that's great. And Shondaland is constantly creating new content. And yes, I believe that they try to keep it within the family. So yeah, I'm very happy that now being on Bridgerton too, if they do all 8 books, then I may have a job for a while, which is great. So
lots of experiences, but lots of memories too that you're harvesting along the way. Any moments that you'd like to share with us that really stand out, that have been significant to your career and will always be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have talked about this story in the past, but I can't not mention it because it's so key. It's so key, and it is the reason why you do your best on every single job that you ever do. So before For the People, the Shondaland show, it was about 2 years prior to that, I ended up getting a day playing job on a Disney show just for one night shoot, coming in as like the D camera operator. And Christian Sabalt was the DP on it, who just, long story short, was the DP on For the People. And I did the one night with him as this additional camera operator. But that night, like I brought it up to him and told him, look, I'm a DP. I went to AFI. I've been shooting for 14 years, however many years it was at the time. And I told him, I said, if you need help at all, because I could tell that it was just such a big day. Like I saw what they were trying to put together. It was like this whole concert thing. And I told him, I said, if you need help at all, just with maybe pre-lighting a little something, doing an insert, whatever, let me know because I might be able to help you out. And he was like, oh, interesting. Okay, well, yeah, let me think about that. And then sure enough, like an hour later, he goes, hey, could you go outside and maybe light the front with some electricians? We need to get this and that. Da, da, da. So throughout the evening, I started hopscotching a little bit where I would go and pre-light something a little bit and he would go look at the shot, see how it was. We'd shoot it. And we did that for pretty much the rest of the night and wrapped up the day, told him, thank you so much. So happy to work with you, blah, blah, blah. And that was really the last time I had worked with him. And I thought, okay, well, that was cool. That was a really fun evening. I got to be a little more creative. That was awesome. And that was the last I had talked to him until 2 years later, 2018, the Shondaland show was calling over to the union to ask if they had any ideas of who may be a good C camera operator / additional cinematographer. So someone who has cinematography background that would be interested in the show. And they had called Stephen Poster, who was the president at the time. And also at that time, I had just won an Emerging Cinematographers Award through the union. And Stephen Poster was like, yes, I know exactly who you should talk to. Her name is Alicia Robbins. She just won an ECA. She's done some work for me. I had done a little bit of work for Stephen Poster on like a green screen day on one of his movies. And Christian goes, oh my gosh, I remember her. Okay, yeah. I remember that if she had not been there that night, I would not have made my day. So that's what I'm talking about, like the alignment of stars all happening at the same time, where I had made an impression on this DP, which paid off 2 years later when I was referred to him, which then got me that Shondaland show, and the rest is history. So yeah, it's just, you just never know like where that break is going to come from and who's watching and who's paying attention. And so, yeah, it's really important that even if you're just doing a day job for someone, that you don't treat it like it's just a one-day gig for a paycheck. And I'm sure that I had done that before. I know I have. Not everyone can be 110% every single time on a job. It's very difficult. Like sometimes maybe your stomach is off. Maybe your foot hurts. Like you never know. I understand that you're never going to be 110% all the time, but you sure as well.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
You need to try. You need to try to do 110% every single time.
What makes you jump out of bed now?
My cat waking me up at 4 a.m. because he wants breakfast way too early. No, I'm just kidding. That is true. That's reality. Creatively, a new show, honestly, just if I know I'm going to be going on to a new show and just starting that first day of pre-production is so much fun to me. It's because it's so intimidating too, because you're going in, you're meeting probably your director, your producers, your AD, you're meeting a lot of these people for the first time. You don't know what their personalities are going to be like. You don't know who you might have conflicts with or who you're going to have to manage a little bit more. And I know for some people that sounds horrible. Like, wait, that's what gets you out of bed? I find it fascinating. I love it. I love going to meet who my new team is and how am I going to create with these people and how do I manage these different personalities so that we're creating the best content. So, yeah, really starting a new show, that's like the best first day for me is just going into prep. And then once I'm in production, I'm very happy to wake up at, well, maybe not super happy, but for the most part, I'm very happy to wake up at 5 a.m. to go shoot something cool.
The satisfying thing is about being on a network shoot or Shondaland, something like this, you've got the budget, so you can be as creative as you can be. Yes. Yeah, that is absolutely true. And I came from very low budget independent filmmaking. Literally the movie that I was shooting right before that Shondaland break was like a $200,000 movie. So I went from shooting out of my cargo van to then having like
4 10-ton grip trucks or whatever the sizes were. So it was a big jump. And then, yeah, you're realizing, oh my gosh, I now have the ability to push that light source through the window and it stays consistent all day. I'm not having to figure out, okay, when will the sun be lighting the window and then doing the coverage around that. You're controlling it. You're controlling the light. You're able to, fine tune it to what it is that you're seeing in your head. And you try to do that as much as possible with the independent stuff too. You just have to be more sneaky about it. You got to figure out how to like time your day so that you're getting the light that you want, and you're having to work with smaller units in creative ways. So you're still going for that look in independent. It's just way harder. Way harder to do it on independent budgets. Yeah, it's nice to have the bigger budgets to play with the tools that you need to get what you're imagining.
And you are going back to Bridgerton?
Yes. Going back to season 4. Yep.
October, did you say?
Right now, we're hoping October. Nothing's been set in stone. So sometime this fall is what we're talking about. I never know I'm doing anything until I'm literally on a plane. So I just don't, I never say dates until I'm in the air.
So what does Alicia Robbins do in her downtime then? Like, even the long summer hiatus?
Yes, goodness. I love camping. I have a little camper called a Taxa Cricket. It's amazing. So my husband and I try to get out in that as much as possible. I'm a big bike rider. I love road cycling as well as mountain biking, exercise, hanging out with my cats. I took up guitar this last year. So I've been playing guitar now for about a year. So that's kind of a new hobby. But yeah, anything that gets me outdoors, paddleboarding, I enjoy that. I don't get to do that.
Do you still swim?
I try to, not as often as I would like. I feel like my shoulders have suffered over the years from so much camera operating, and swimming kind of hurts them a little bit. So I can't swim the way that I used to. I can still do it. I'm not doing it as often because there is a great pool near me that I could use every single day. It's a little much on the shoulders. But yeah, biking and camping and anything outdoors, I'm happy with.
And it sounds as if you've been doing a lot of podcasting too, because you shot Bridgerton.
Yes. Lots of hype around this last season. So been lucky to get doing a lot of podcasts. Been great.
So you become a podcaster?
I guess so. I need to do another show, though, so we have some more subjects.
Yeah, well, you've got a lot of content right there. And, when you get to these bigger projects, though, I'm wondering, with it, you have all this experience. You have that advantage of anticipation. But how do you enjoy the pressure of it all?
Oh, yeah, because it is a lot of pressure. It's very stressful because you have to... I mean, you have to succeed. You can't fail at it. You got to make it look good, and you got to be on time, and you got to get the story told. So there is a lot of pressure there. And you're also fulfilling so many different visions. It's not just the vision of like the showrunner, but it's also just the vision of the schedule, making sure that you're abiding by what that AD has scheduled. I do enjoy that aspect of it, the kind of the political side of it. I think it's kind of fun. I find it challenging. At first, it's stressful. And then I think about, okay, how do I manage this? How do I make it so that this schedule is adhering to the vision that we talked about? And what can I do to make it easier for everyone? Or, so I try to make it a fun challenge, even the pressure. I try to make it a fun challenge and try to see it just in a different light, that it's not just a pressure cooker, but that it's actually a way to figure out how to manage people and fulfill what they're hoping to see. So, and then, yes, I make sure that I go home and I try to like maybe do some yoga at night, maybe do some yoga, do some stretching, take care of myself on the weekends. That's also really, really important. I try to not do any work, if possible, when I'm shooting on the weekends. I take 2 days off and I sightsee, I bike ride, I eat good food, I have a glass of wine, like I indulge. I might go get a massage, whatever it is. But I make sure that I have those 2 days to do whatever it is that I really want to do. And that helps when you go back Monday morning to manage, again, all that pressure that you know you're going to have.
Absolutely. You have to take the lid off the pressure cooker, don't you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure there have been plenty of cool moments in your career, Alicia. So to round off, I'm going to give you an example. Shauna Hagen, your mate, was on the show recently, and she talked about a train ride she took with Meryl Streep.
Huh.
They want to shoot they met up with Michelle Obama, and how cool it was working with those two women.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What would your most cool moment be?
Oh my gosh, my most cool moment. I actually have a couple, and it's early in my career because you're still a little starstruck when you see people. When I was working on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes as a rig technician, I was always a big fan of Andy Serkis, and I knew he was Caesar, the main ape. But I hadn't seen him yet. I'd already been on the show a few days and we hadn't seen him yet. We were shooting other segments and I was sitting there messing with my little 3D rig. And all of a sudden I heard this horse clomping up behind me and I turned around and it's Andy Serkis on top of the horse in his full mocap suit. And he's just looking down at me and he already had like the Caesar face, like just, and I was like staring at him. I think my mouth was open too, going, oh. And he's probably looking at me like, who is this weird camera person? But it was just so exciting to see him in person because I was a fan. And what's so funny about that is I just recently had a full circle moment with him because I got to go to the premiere of Bridgerton in New York. They were screening the first episode, which was one of mine. And Andy Serkis is actually married to one of the actors. And so he was there. He was at the screening and I got to meet him at at the party afterwards. And I told him the story. I told him that I worked on his movie and that I was this rig technician and and then I was like, and guess what? So I shoot this show now and you just watched one of my episodes. He's like, oh my gosh, wow. So that was super cool just to have that full circle moment. And then another moment that way, way back, I was doing a documentary in Africa and we were shooting, it was an organization called, I think, Opportunity International. And it was about giving microloans to women business owners so they could start their own business. And it was sponsored by British banks and even royalty. So Princess Anne was the one that was, I think, the head of the foundation. So I actually got to meet her and film her in Africa while she was meeting a lot of these ladies that were getting these microfinance loans. That was pretty cool. Like you rarely get to meet royalty when you're doing filmmaking and camera work. So when you get to meet like a princess, that's pretty cool too.
That's wonderful. I'm sure there are lots more stories that we could tell. And we should have another episode of this, Alicia. Maybe I should get a couple of you on, maybe get you on with Shauna and, we could do a reminiscing episode.
Oh, that's fun. The cool moment episode. Yes.
Well, Alicia, enjoy the rest of your summer and good luck with the next season of Bridgerton.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for taking time to come on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
And some news now from a friend of the show, cinematographer Gretchen Warthen.
Hey, Chris, thank you. I am very excited to announce the launch of the Lady Camera Guy website. It is going to be chock full of links, resources to products and helpful information. It's a lot like the Lady Camera Guy Instagram, but it's expanded with so much more information to help people who are just starting out. We are also launching a monthly newsletter, which people can sign up for on our website by entering their email address and just simply clicking sign up for our newsletter. So check us out on ladycameraguy.com. That's the website. Follow us on Lady Camera Guy on Instagram, and make sure to sign up for our newsletter for even more information and content.
And if you scroll down the show notes accompanying this episode, you'll find links to Alicia's social media and also to her IMDb and her website. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you'll also find the full transcript of each episode of AART. Just scroll down the show notes below the show notes, and there you'll find the complete transcript. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to our social media, so you can follow us on Instagram, leave your comments and questions, suggestions for guests. As always, we love to hear from you. If you prefer email, our address is hollowellstudios@gmail.com. My thanks again to my guest this week, Alicia Robbins, and to you for listening. I'll be back next week when my guest will be the British wildlife and pet portrait artist Lucy Joyce. So I do hope you'll join me then.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.